Just a few more notes on Scott Bales, who spent 3 hours in the gym following his flight from Singapore, I heard. Perhaps that's the reason why he looks so disturbingly good this morning, despite his travels. Now, here at Leonteq's Revolution Day, technology always played a very big role. I remember back in 2011, a couple of people actually explained about it in their feedback forms. We always take them very seriously. However, given the developments ever since, I think it's fair to say that the choice was right. The speed at which innovation takes place really shows that it was a good choice to put such an emphasis on technology and that it was very foresightful. Nowadays, technology is almost always a dominant theme at financial conferences, even pushing the low interest rate environment and regulation in the background. And in a world that inevitably values digital first, executives are faced with a challenging question: what technologies should we invest in? Now, our next speaker has answers to this question. He is a former banker. He says he is a reformed banker. He worked in 32 countries, has written regulation in 17 of those. He built 11 financial services startups, 4 of which exceeded $100 million in valuation. So in a nutshell, he has a great deal of experience. He lives, as you heard, currently in Singapore and is, amongst many other things, MD of the advisory firm Innovation Labs Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Scott Bales.
Thank you, Alan. First and foremost, 2018 is going to be, I like having themes on my years, and actually Chris already picked up on this. My theme for 2018 is gratitude. So firstly, I am very grateful for you all having me here. Secondly, I'd like to give you guys an idea of why I'm here. Sandra, if you could please stand up. Sandra and I met in Vietnam last year during a Standard Chartered asset management event, and he has very kindly been a part of instrumental for me actually being here today. So thank you so much for having me here. My goal today is really simple. I need to inspire 10 of you to ask me a very deep question. That probably won't happen during Q&A, it'll happen over coffee or a wine later. But my job is to inspire you to be curious. That's it. I have a story I'm going to take you through. This story is deliberately designed based on the trends in society, the technologies that are shaping your world, but more importantly, as a former banker, it is very much critical to the financial services sector this year. As it said, the focus there is on the little boy named Isaac. Isaac is a character that I've created. He's not real. He's a character for the purposes of telling the story. He fits into a world where everything in a day has changed to digital. Our habits from who he will admit that they check their smartphone before they say good morning to their partner in the morning on a daily basis. It's now normal in society, these things. Unbelievably, 18% of smartphone owners will admit to using their device in the shower. Think about the effort you've got to go to as an individual to make that happen. You must either have a waterproof device or some kind of means of making it hands-free. It's a lot of effort to go on an individual level to change your habit, because 10 years ago, people would have thought you were weird for doing that. Okay? We as people are changing. Unfortunately, the key theme of my topic today for you is technology doesn't actually matter. What matters is the impact it has on us as society. How does it change us in 3 roles of our lives? First and foremost, we are citizens. Our role, our expectations, our social and cultural norms as citizens have changed dramatically over the last 10 years. Next, we are consumers. Our hard-earned dollar decides the financial and commercial viability of any product or service in the world today. And our biases and weighting factors around that have changed because of that technology advancement. And lastly, and probably the most challenging question for organizations today, us as a workforce has changed. The way we work, our values in the workforce, how we collaborate, what we want to do throughout our career has changed. The internet, in a minute, is an absolutely hectic place. I would not even I would not encourage you even for a second to try and understand it. But what happens now at a scale is unprecedented. And the scary part is we're only just at the start of it. If you take, particularly, a quota on Cisco's forecast on data growth alone. So data is actually a pretty good proxy on technological advancements in the world. The data growth in the world just up to the end of this decade is staggering. To the point where trends like, who has a 4K TV at home already? So we're only at about 2% of potential just in this room. 4K video is one of the largest accelerators of technology adoption on the planet. Now, the highest 4K saturation today is in Korea. Korean girls dancing on stage to music is the most popular genre in 4K today, but that's only going to proliferate across everything. Recent investments from Google and Apple, particularly around what's called 4K HDR, means that how we consume content, being from entertainment or a learning perspective or even from a corporate perspective, are going to rapidly change just because of this. The leap from 480p was the norm in society just 10 years ago. Our data consumption just on how we consume things has exponentially grown in just a short period of time. And as a result, the data that goes with that, as you can see, from 2009 to 2020, data consumption will be 44 times larger. That has implications for the submarine cable industry, the telecommunications sectors, media sectors, technology sectors. Every industry is changing at a pace that we can't even grasp. But here's our second challenge. Far too often do I go and deal with clients and their boardrooms still look like this. This photo was taken in 1896 at a bank. Far too many boardrooms are still mahogany-lined gentlemen's clubs with guys in suits that almost rarely speak to customers. This is the Achilles heel of almost every sector. The fact that decisions are made in complete isolation in a way that was designed over 100 years ago. How they dispersed power was extremely and immensely powerful through the industrial era. We had ways around that facilitated globalization, industrialization of industries. It made scale possible. But in a new world where the answer to any question is 2 clicks away, that I can follow my CEO on any social media platform, and the next generation expects that even though there is 6 layers of hierarchy there, my CEO, my chairman, should be approachable. And 20 years ago, it would have been almost socially unacceptable for me to go up and say hi to Chris in the foyer. Today, that's an expected behavioral norm. The CEO is expected, the chairman is expected to be open and accessible. And as a result, particularly in regulated industries, we have what I call blind dependence. We have a bunch of particularly decision makers that will blame regulation, lack of business case, a lack of understanding, we can't be first to do this, a whole bunch of excuses. While over the other side of the ocean in California, every single day they try something new. Every single day they experiment with something. Even if it's not going to be their end game, they will do something purely for the purpose of learning. One of the most important parts of the technological transformation is not the end game at all. It's the experience and skills you pick up along the way. It's those 35 apps on your phone that you no longer use, but just because you wanted to try them, or a friend recommended them. They're an important part of your personal transformation in the technology world. We need to get beyond the fear of doing things for the first time. There are safe ways to try new things. One of the amazing forces, and this is a study that focused on the top 500 companies in Asia Pacific. 66% of them said the adoption of new technologies is now vital for their business in the coming years. Vital. 62% of those said that disruptive technologies would be the most significant threat to their business. I'll give you the perfect example. I'm speaking now almost every single week on the idea of what's called over-the-top or OTT businesses. Netflix is an OTT business. Amazon is somewhat an OTT business. Alibaba is an OTT business. Spotify is an OTT business in that it runs over the top of jurisdictions. It's a non-jurisdictional service that is global. Every single incumbent today first thinks about their jurisdiction. That in itself is a limiting factor, because if you only adhere to your current jurisdiction, you're easily going to be eaten by the global giants. Like particularly in the media sector today, this is for anyone that works on media funds. Any jurisdictional focused media company right now is in dire straits. Even if they are government-backed, government-supported, they are going to struggle. You know, I work with media companies in the 7 countries at the moment. Every single one of them is struggling with what happens if Netflix comes knocking on my door? What if Amazon comes? What's Apple going to do with their new 4K ambition and their production ambitions? Those big brands that are now, look, 84% of people are worried about big brands coming into their industry. 84%. That's almost everyone. You've almost got to think, what if someone that thinks like Uber came into the fund management area? What would it look like? And we need to think beyond our constraints. We've got to imagine these scenarios to even be potentially ready for what might happen. The 2 biggest forces in your sector today are these: cloud and big data. Absolute bottom line hygiene factor trends. 2 reasons why. Cloud means that infrastructure becomes a variable on-demand service. Previously, most financial services companies were bound by a constraint of storage and computational power. Your budgets, your programs, your strategies were limited based on how many servers can we put into a room, how much power, how much does it cost. To give you an idea, who here in this room has done Monte Carlo analysis before? As a banker, I did Monte Carlo analysis back in 2005 as a pre-deal check for counterparty and country risk. Back then, even doing 100 scenarios pre-deal was quite complex. The computer power we required to do 100 scenarios was expensive. Just last year, I worked with a financial services company that now does 10 million scenarios pre-deal. Now, if you think about that, has an impact on capital adequacy. If you can run 10 million scenarios on a deal before you even commit it, you can forecast capital adequacy at a more significant, more accurate level. The impact they have for them is an excess of $140 million in capital they can now play with. Most bank CEOs, CFOs, or funds management CFOs would go crazy over an extra $140 million to put back into their trading products. The next is big data. We're going for a world where a small amount of data is no longer good enough. We need millions and trillions of data points. The example I always talk about is most banks today that give you a MasterCard or a Visa card, it takes 178 fields of data to approve or decline a credit card payment. Most banks only store between 16 and 17 of those fields. So in a world where big data is going to be vital to your business, why are we only keeping less than 10% of the data? In there is things like GDP data, the location of the merchant, like simple data which should actually build profiles all the time. If you want to compete at the levels of Amazon and Netflix, you have to be keeping every single piece of data in accumulation in terms of driving your decisions. But here is the biggest challenge for everyone. You keep asking me the question, which technologies? But I pose a challenge to you. You're looking in the wrong direction if you ask me which technologies. Like this nature photographer here, he spent thousands of dollars on his camera equipment, and when he goes out to photograph penguins, he's looking in the wrong direction. The reason being is technologies will come and go. You all know a technology in your life that came and go, whether it was Betamax, various things, particularly in audio and music. We've seen a lot of technologies come and go in the last 20, 30 years. Who here had a mini disc player? Mini disc was meant to kill the music industry. It didn't last very long. It didn't even survive the deprecation of its predecessor, which is the CD. Like every single leap is going to happen. We have to understand that we're going to keep changing. But the thing that does not change is us. In every single scenario, we are the vital piece in the puzzle. As a citizen, a consumer, and as an employee or a workforce. So to bring that story to life, we talk about Isaac. And so I've actually got some giveaways. And sorry, Sandra, you have to be quiet during this period. Who can tell me the importance of the 29th of June, 2007? And I'll tell you right now, it affected every single person in this room. Yell out. We're a very quiet bunch. Have you not had enough coffee yet? No, that's too close to home for you guys. 29th of June, 2007. No. It's got to be bigger than that. Think bigger. Who said that? On that date, Steve Jobs stood on stage and announced to the world the iPhone. Well done.
Thanks a lot.
Now, the reason this is so important is not the beautifully designed bezel and the touch screen and all the things that go into the magical design of a physical product. There is a principle underneath this device which changed every single person in this room. It's called standardized, ubiquitous mobile computing. Without that principle, the number of apps you carry in your phone and the global adoption of smartphones would not have been possible. Remember, the iPhone was not the first smartphone. If any of you tried to build mobile apps prior to the iPhone, which meant building on Nokia's J2ME platform, it was a headache. The same device on two different carriers would behave differently. So if you wanted to build a mobile trading app or a mobile banking app, which I did back then for ANZ Bank in Australia, on the same Nokia device, Optus versus Telstra, our two largest telcos, the same app would behave differently. What Apple did is standardize. It put principles in place around how apps should be built and distributed in the world. It became the tipping point for us, our digital lives today. It's the reason why, actually, who here doesn't have a smartphone? I was going to say, there's the door. It creates in society a change in our psychology, a change in our societal norms. What we have here is we've changed within us. We are not millennials and Gen X's and Gen Y's. In this society, we are digital laggards, digital natives, and digital immigrants. Isaac is a digital native. He's born into a world where digital is the default form of communication between everyone. At the other end of the scale is my grandfather, who's turning 90 in a couple of weeks. He is a digital laggard. He's the last to adopt the technology. It's the kind of people that are only just getting on Facebook now. They might have got a smartphone on their last recontract. But in between is probably the majority of us. We think we're pretty proficient on technology. We carry a smartphone. We know how to take a selfie occasionally. We might have even, we might have even gone as far as taking a photo of our coffee this morning. Who here took a photo of their breakfast this morning? But we're limited. Our appreciation of technology will always be bound on our historical experience. We were grown up in a pre-technology world. So we always have the nostalgia of remember face-to-face. We remember branch managers. We remember knowing a local butcher's first name, a local greengrocer's first name. That is our measure of success of technology. Isaac's generation doesn't have that. They never experienced it, so they see the world in a different way. And to best explain it, we talk about Isaac's world he grows up in. I can almost guarantee you, every one of your educations was based on books. The next generation don't even know what Encyclopedia Britannica is. 247 years in print, went bankrupt 4 years ago. It will be not known to an entire generation. Junk mail is now considered irresponsible use of money, because sending junk mail to the digital generation, a generation that doesn't even have a habit of going to their mailbox more than once a month. So if you're corresponding to them via snail mail and wondering why you're not getting a response, because they probably don't even know where they have a mailbox. Their birth, their death, their first car, their first job will not come via the traditional classifieds. Again, reckless spend. Landlines globally on decline. In 2007, I worked in Cambodia for a year to build a business called Wing Money. That was one of the 4 that made 100 million. In that country of 15.5 million people, there was only 2,000 landlines. You're talking about a country that came out of civil war only in 1993. They leapfrogged the landline generation and went straight to mobile. 67% of the population were on mobile phones then, but only 2,000 landlines in the country. The yellow pages is out of date before it even gets to your front doorstep. And we wonder why we keep getting it. The fax machine. This is what I love picking on the financial services sector for. Does everyone know what the word NPS means? Net Promoter Score. It's a measure of positive or negative sentiment of your brand. The technology that has the most negative impact on the perception of your brand is this machine. You ask a customer, particularly a digital native, to fax something, and they will look at you like you have 3 heads. It's because who here knows where the nearest fax machine is? Typically in a financial service company, they know exactly where the nearest fax machine is. But in a lot of other industries, this is basically a point of frustration. Let's move faster. Optical discs only really started commercializing in the mid-90s, now obsolete. Businesses that were previously selling physical products through physical distribution had the products from underneath them digitized, mainly books here, musics and movie, wiped out entire industries. Borders and Blockbusters gone. Toys R Us experienced this last year as well. Toys R Us tried to compete at a price point with Amazon. They were never going to win. Remember back to the OTT thing. Amazon plays across jurisdictions. They have far superior scale. They're always going to beat you on price. They were told this for 10 years, yet they still didn't listen to their advisors. Toys R Us is gone. Next chance to win a book. The single most important, I'll make this easy for you, the single most important age in an individual is the age of 17. Can anyone tell me why? Free book? I'm going to run out of time if I don't jump ahead. At the age of 17, the average human being has what's called their first consumer empowerment moment. You make your very first consumer decisions. Now, there is people up higher, there's people lower, depending on markets, but the average person at the age of 17 has their first consumer empowerment moment. This is extremely important in your life as a consumer, because the brands that you like and dislike at that age are the brands that you will like and dislike forever. Brands that you disliked when you first started making consumer choices are brands you likely still have a bias against today. And I'll give you the best example. Who here is a Pepsi fan? Do you know why no one in this room is a Pepsi fan? I'll give that book out, everyone can guess why. Sorry? It didn't exist. No, it existed. Pepsi's existed just as long as Coke. But the reason that Coke won the brand war had nothing to do with celebrities or the sexy design on the bottle, all these various things. It came down to one thing: experience with the first-time consumer. Who here remembers this machine? Particularly in the United States, this was an importantly vital machine because on a hot summer's day, Mum or Dad would give you a quarter, you'd put it in a slot, you make your selection of Fanta, Sprite or Coke. Out comes a frosty cold bottle of soda. You'd pop it off from the top and savor in that drink. That was extremely positive impression on the entire generation. Pepsi refused to do that for 8 years. 8 years. And as a result, Coca-Cola accelerated into a number 1 position, not because of just the uptake they had in that 8 years, because it left a first impression on an entire generation. So let's go back to Isaac for a second. He's going to be the age of 17 in, we're 2018 now, wow, new year. 5 years' time. Are we ready for Isaacs? Do you think Leonteq is ready for Isaacs? Now the reality is, at the age of 17, Isaac's unlikely to be a Leonteq customer. So we have to get a bit more dramatic. His angry little friend Timmy is born on the 21st of November 2000. He was born the same day as the very first smartphone, the Nokia communicator. But he's also born, and it's an important factor, PayPal has been with us for 18 years. In many countries, PayPal is now old enough to drink. It's been around for a long time. I've worked on PayPal response strategies with 41 clients over the last 18 years. Yet not a single bank has managed to understand why PayPal was so successful. Because all they did was replace the experience of bank code, routing code, all those stupid codes you needed to know to send money to somebody else, to all I need to know is their email address. To the point, even more modern ones, is all I need to know is your telephone number and I can send you money, no matter who you bank with. Unfortunately, for someone that has grown up with PayPal always being a norm in society, they made their choices 2 years ago. They liked or disliked your services 2 years ago. But let's get even more dramatic, because there is some more important statistics in society than just iPhones and PayPal. Isabel and Ethan here, born in the years 2001 and 1998, are born on two of the most influential changes in society. First, Ethan is born the same day as the iPod. This was basically when we disintimated the need to physically distribute our entertainment, our music. Music is universal. Almost everybody loves music, no matter what your genre. And now how you consume and buy music, share music, is vitally important in how you expect service providers in your life to behave. Any of you that you already use Spotify today, Spotify is already rewiring your brain on how you expect other industries to behave as well. Someone who's grown up with digital music being the norm made their choices last year. But here's a scary one. Isabel has been around as long as Google. Google turns 20 this year. 20. She made her choices 4 years ago. And here's the important part of this. Prior to Google existing, any institution or organization could tell the market, I'm the best, I'm the safest, I'm the cheapest, I have the highest quality. And it was up to you as an individual to accept that or not. The vast majority of us just accepted it, particularly from the financial services sector. The two biggest declines in NPS since Google came out were banks and insurance companies. Why? Because an entire generation could find the answer to any question within 2 clicks. We went from accepting what was told to us to questioning what's being told to us. The behavior was far more important than Google itself, to the point where, who here in this room will admit to going on and Googling or WebMDing your symptoms before you see a GP? The vast majority of us now question one of the most highly regarded professions in society. Like you have to go to school for 7 years to become a GP. Yet we're questioning them using Google. We have changed. I just showed you. Half you in this room have changed in your understanding of a doctor. As I said, we have now changed as a citizen, a consumer, and as a workforce. And nothing is more in your face than something we do every single day. Eating. I'm pretty sure every one of you here eats. How has eating changed in the digital era? I'll give you a free book. One part is to become more health conscious, but even larger than that. Convenience is coming up. It's something even bigger than that. Experience is getting close to what I want. Sorry? Food to go, getting closer again. Eating's changed completely. Think about something that would be completely weird 10 years ago. Religion again? Who said Instagram? The vast majority of us now accept that it's socially normal to take photos of our food or beverage before we consume it. If you, in 2010, If you saw someone taking a photo of their Starbucks, moving around serviettes and cutlery to get the perfect lighting, standing on the table like this, you would have gone, what the hell is this guy doing? Today, oh, cool, he's just taking an Instagram photo. We've changed. So much so that where I live in Singapore, 67% of the population admits to taking a photo of food or beverage at least once a week before they consume it. It's so prolific in Singapore that if Instagram were to crash, Singapore would starve. And this is only getting faster. You know, the wireless took nearly 4 decades to hit what's called causal scale, 50 million people. We can now get to 50 million people faster than ever before. We have 4 decades on the far left. Angry Birds took 35 days. I have one last book to give away. What is the only thing faster than Angry Birds to touch 50 million people? Perfect. Pokemon Go scaled in 17 days. Now, if you use those numbers, just the scale economics, this is going to sound a bit quirky, so go with me for a second. If you use just those scale economics, you can hit 50 million people in 17 days. If you use that modeling and apply it to democracy. Now, excluding China and Saudi Arabia, within the G20, there are instruments in place that if you use that scale, you could replace the leader in under 11 days. 11 days. Now, I don't know why Trump's still in office given that kind of scale, but it means that if an idea strong enough unites the people in a particular direction to invoke the various instruments of their democratic society, you could replace the leader in 11 days. Now, we've seen this once before, but we saw a very horrible version of that. The Arab Spring was exactly this. On day 0 of the Arab Spring, there was just 12,700 Twitter accounts in Egypt. On day 21, 23.7 million accounts in Egypt. The rest you watched on the news. That's the power of causal scale in the digital economy. You do something that unites people in a strong way, it gets scale fast. Now, it could be as quirky as Pokemon Go, but it could be as compelling as the Arab Spring. So based on this, I have 4 minutes to tell you which technology are actually going to matter. First and foremost, never ignore social media. Social media is not social media. It's one simple term. It is the democratization of opinion. You no longer own the perception of your brand. You no longer own the value of your brand. That must be a two-way discussion with the market. Because if they don't agree with how you see your value, you have a disconnect. The customer has a voice now. The customer's voice will supersede your voice. It is fueled by the fact that we all carry a device in our pocket, so that mechanism for scale is with us 24/7. The devices around us have evolved over time to the point where, we've just seen the iPhone 10 come out. The change is here. Actually, who here is using an iPhone 10 already? Behaviorally, it is vastly different from its predecessor. It is weird to just look at your phone and it unlocks. You trust, oh, hang on, is it actually unlocked or is it safe? Because in this split second, it's opened and unlocked just using your facial recognition. But the big technology that is going to change a lot of industries is 5G. You ask me why. 4G right now is fast. You can watch 4K video to your heart's content. Game of Thrones, whatever you like watching. But 4G has an Achilles heel, a thing called latency, which is the round trip time from the radio towers back to your device, which has meant that technologies like artificial intelligence don't quite work on 4G. They're not like the intelligence of Siri, Cortina, Alexa is limited by the latency in the network. 5G's primary purpose in society is to address latency. It is not going to make wireless networks faster. It is just going to reduce the latency down by a factor of nearly 40%. That enhances the abilities of Cortina, Alexa, Siri exponentially. And the conversations you'll be having will be far more engaging, far more intelligent, to the point where we actually could see a change in how we interact with our devices. Who here already interacts regularly with a voice assistant? 3 people out of us. I can almost guarantee you this, by the time you do this conference next year, there will be over 20 of you. One reason, you probably just triggered your curiosity. You'll go and buy a Google Home, or you'll start using Siri on your device. But it's normal now. It's normal for me to now go, hey Siri, set an alarm for 7 a.m. And she just did. That's the normal interaction of us in the future. Cloud computing in every single sector will change, to the point where I made a statement last year with the Monetary Authority of Singapore that the goal for the financial services sector is 50% of your current infrastructure on cloud by 2020. After that, the analyst community will start downgrading you because your underlying costs in your business model will be on 2 challenges. One, your computational power will be a tiny fraction of your competitors, but 2, you'll be paying over the top from a cost and infrastructure perspective. The CTI of those that have made the full leap to public cloud will be so far ahead, you'll never catch them. You've got to think 100 million Monte Carlo scenarios. That's going to be the benchmark. APIs, having technology interact with between entities is going to be vital. Distributed ledgers. Now this is blockchain, this is Bitcoin, but distributed ledgers as a concept will change sectors like trade finance, contracts, money and payment systems. Anyone here who deals with interbank stuff, I can almost guarantee you Ripple is on the right path towards disrupting SWIFT. There is going to be a clash very soon, Ripple versus SWIFT, on the interbank, the Nostro-Vostro arrangements between banks. And as it gets faster and faster, the intelligence of our machines won't be a scary thing, there'll be an amplification of our intelligence. I was asked the question in Vietnam last year, what's going to happen to asset managers and fund managers when AI becomes normal? Okay, here's the challenge. Unfortunately, 9 in 10 fund managers are just following a script. They're doing enough to not get fired. Those people are going to be out of a job. But that one crazy guy in the corner, he's going to interact with these new AI models to create exponentially higher value. Yes, 90% will go, but that one guy will be performing 10 times better. Autonomous vehicles will start changing the efficiency of our cities. Forget it's great that you can get in a car and sit there and do nothing, but the real advantage of this is the optimization of our transport systems, which has a huge impact on the economy of a city. Transport optimization. We can change real estate prices based on car routing. We can dynamically change around hazards, floods. Oh, there's been a crash here, let's dynamically go around it. And it all gets plugged together once everything is plugged into the system. In time, almost everything in your life will be plugged into the system. It is very, very realistic that your biology, like at a base level, I'm thinking like blood pathology, your endocrine levels, your endorphins, will be in some kind of real-time monitoring thing for your own benefit, to help you live longer, higher quality lives, early detection of cancer and Alzheimer's, all those risks in society. Think about this. If I can real-time monitor your biological profile, if I can preempt your risks, if I can intervene at an early stage, what does that mean for insurance companies? If I can now mitigate risks in a world where their entire business is based on the classification and exclusion of risk, insurance companies are going to struggle unless they make that leap to preventative or risk mitigation services. OTD will be a universal principle. I'm going to skip this. I've got 20 other slides, but we can do them offline if you want, but I'm going to finish this slide, or 2 slides, sorry. When it comes to new technology, I encourage you to do some really simple things. First, don't get scared. Start with, why does it exist, not what is it? Why does Snapchat exist? Your homework today is, and if anyone can tell, do I have any books left? No. I'll mail you a book if by lunchtime you can tell me why Snapchat exists. Not what it is, why. The next is accept what's new normal. Some things are now normal in society. Googling our medical symptoms before we see a GP is now normal. What else is normal? Reconsider the risks. Far too often, particularly in the financial services sector, we look at the risks of new technology thinking like we're still in the 1970s. New data, new trends are at our hand. We need to reevaluate the risk scenarios. We need to learn, play with the technology before we attempt to govern it. Far too often, again, we apply 1980 security rules to 2018 technologies and wonder why we end up constraining them. Security is a day zero task. Basically, you must get to understand security up front. And lastly, we call loose coupling. Technology is no longer big systems, it's thousands and thousands of little systems. It's called microservices. Those large systems you have internally today will not exist in 10 years' time. You'll have thousands and thousands of little systems that come together with APIs to interact and create, whether it's pricing, risk analysis, portfolio management, all those kind of things will be a whole series of small applications. That is the architecture of Facebook, Amazon, and Google. I'm going to skip through all these slides to this one. You as an individual, to thrive in the new world, 5 things to take away. The first thing to do is to understand that Isaac was built using the principles of design thinking. I use a thing called persona modeling. He's a fictional character using standard design thinking methodologies. But the only way to understand the Isaacs of the world is to get out into the world and actually meet them. Ask them what they're doing. Why are they doing it like that? Get curious again. Next, find a problem in the world that you are passionate about. You as an individual, not an organization. You as an individual. You are far more likely to be persistent through the challenges of disruption and technology when you are passionate about solving the problem. Next, think about how do we build experiences and no longer products, policies. And the best example of this is nobody buys a mortgage. Literally nobody. You're buying a home. Getting the finance is just one of the steps in the experience of buying a home. Every single product and service in society is going to go through that same recalibration. The next is build, measure, learn. Build tiny experiments to test your hypothesis or your ideas in the world before you overscale them. You no longer need 100-page business cases. Just go out there and do a $10 experiment. Try a new app. Try something new. And the last thing here, find yourself a digital mentor. And I'm not talking about an overpaid McKinsey consultant. Who here has teenage children? They are your best advisors. Go and spend time with them, what they do with technology. Understand why. What are they doing? How do they find out about that? It amazes you when they pick up a new app and intuitively know how it works. Use them as advisors. Most of my clients today have digital advisory boards that are just made up of their kids. They come in, they listen to the pain points and challenges of the board, and they share technology stuff with each other. Guess what? That's free, and your kids love doing it. Your homework to go away today is to figure out who is your Isaac. How do you empathize for the next generation so that you have the right mindset to drive that into, to inject it into all your decisions? To use and talk about Isaac as if that person is real. To create somebody who you talk, let's talk about Michael. Michael is XYZ. Michael is 31 years of age. He has X sum of income. These are his goals in life. These are his current pains. To bring these people to life. That's your homework. Find out who your Isaac is. I want to thank you for your time this morning. We're out of time for questions, but I will be around for the breaks.
Thank you. Stay for a minute. We
Okay.
still have a couple of minutes,
Okay.
Scott. Any questions from the audience? One second, you're going to get a microphone. Just
Okay.
1 second.
Thanks, Scott. I have been working in banking for 36 years here in Switzerland. At that time, there were over 600 banks. We are now closer to 150 to 200. How many CEOs of Swiss banks do you think today they understand what you just said over the last 30 minutes? And the second question is, how many banks will there be in 10 years in Switzerland?
So do you want the honest answer or the politically correct answer?
No. We are honest people.
So I'll be honest. I've only ever met one bank CEO that actually gets that. Does everyone know who Piyush Gupta is, CEO of DBS? So Piyush has invested 5 years of his time learning to code, he's literally getting his hands dirty trying to learn this stuff. He is an exemplary example globally in terms of understanding. I'm yet to meet another CEO that's even close to that. On your answer of how many banks will exist, you said 600 to 150. I would almost guarantee you that number will be close to 12 within 2 decades. The main reason being is you think about your pressures on today. Your biggest pressure today comes in CTI, cost to income ratio, which mainly plays back to where do you get margins. You create value in your funds, you can create value, but the expectations at a performance level are going to change vastly over the next couple of years. Even your most complex products will be understood by a 10-year-old before the decade's out. If you want to completely blow your mind in terms of where the next generation is going, I think look at YouTube, 9-year-old Canadian explains banking. And in 4 minutes, a 9-year-old explains the mechanics of banking, purely self-taught, but in a way that tells the world that banks are corrupt. If an entire generation goes that way, the pressures on banks are hard. Because the next part that's challenging of that is if the answer to every question is 2 clicks away, they'll understand how to do complex derivatives, how to do swaps, all the most complex products. They will understand the rules of that. It's not hard. Transparency is one of the biggest trends in the next generation. They want to know more. They want to share more because they believe that common transparency leads to understanding, understanding leads to collaboration, and that's the direction of their generation.
Any more questions here? 1 second, you're also going to get a microphone. So,
what do you think about the future of cryptocurrencies?
I would have asked you the same question.
So I want to break, this is a question I get all the time, I want to break cryptocurrencies up into 2 topics. One part of cryptocurrency is, because blockchain, for instance, which is the most public example of cryptocurrency today, is 2 layers of technology. It is first, it's distributed ledger. Distributed ledger technology will change the financial sector completely. It'll change a number of sectors. For one reason why. Currently, the financial sector is very much determined on 1 or 2 institutions to be the governing ledger of what's right and wrong. That creates a challenge in terms of authority, trust, and so forth. It's one of the core challenges we have in the banking sector today. Distributed ledger means that the network itself is self-verifying, self-cleansing. The ledger is completely transparent. So it means that if Alan and I want to interact, I can give her cash, but I need everyone in the front row here to agree the transaction exists, that it actually happened. That I was me, that I had $100, that I gave it to Alan. And they must verify it. Without having to say that UBS are verified that we interacted. Okay? That is one thing that will definitely happen. That particularly will happen in domestic monetary systems. That is almost given. It's only there in small touches now, but it will happen in time. Cryptocurrency in itself is the next level. Cryptocurrency comes out of the need to provide security measures around distributed ledger for monetary purposes. That's its core principle. Everyone thinks that cryptocurrency comes out so Bitcoin can be used to buy drugs off the Silk Road. That is a bad case study to refer to. But the principles of embedding cryptography on currency, on distributed ledger, is the security principles that we need to put in place for a lot of our monetary systems. Main reason being, and here's a scary thing, the security and crypto principles of cryptocurrency today are over 300 times more secure and trustworthy than the current financial services sector. Over 300 times more secure than the current principles you use. And the main reason being is because the backbone of almost every banking sector is 2 things, mainframes and COBOL. Did everyone know what those 2 things are? Yeah. Mainframes and COBOL are the Achilles heel of the financial services sector. Cryptocurrency essentially is why it's 300 times better off. It will create a force where there will be versions of cryptocurrency in different markets. I can almost guarantee you that there will come a point in time where one of the monetary authorities will decide that our currency will be in circulation using some kind of distributed ledger cryptocurrency. The world leader today is the Royal Bank of Canada. They've had multiple experiments around experimenting with blockchain, with cryptocurrency as a future of their currency.
Anyone else? Here, second row.
You showed us the right side of the new world, but what about Big Brother,
Which Big Brother?
NSA and such a kind of
Yeah, the Big Brother scenario is, there's two parts to tackle when it comes to the Big Brother thing is, first and foremost, a lot of the principles that went into cryptocurrency were around addressing how do we lock out people like the NSA. So actually, NSA doesn't yet have a way to break Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so forth. Yet we have thousands of case studies of how they've broken into Apple, to Facebook, to Google, to various systems. But the more important part of this is what we call mutual value exchange. For an entire generation, their behavior is transparent by default. By default. That's why they are far more prolific at sharing things. They are far more open with things. They are far more open on social media, with photos, with their opinions, with even what they do in the workforce. But that comes with an expectation of a mutual exchange of value. If they do not see value coming back, they will not share. But as an underlying principle, they actually don't care about monitoring if it's coming back as value. The best example of this is Amazon. Who here uses Amazon?
Everyone.
Who here will admit to buying something that Amazon recommended? That was only possible because you were transparent with your history. Amazon can monitor your browsing habits, your purchasing preferences, your web search preferences to recommend better things to you. The next generation accepts that as a norm because they want the value of having things recommended to them. One of the biggest challenges in the digital economy, and even I experience this, is an absolute saturation and overwhelming amount of information. Who here is overwhelmed by the inbox or their social media feed on a daily basis? The businesses that will thrive in the future are those that will encourage people to be transparent and give back value because of that transparency. I'll say it again. The businesses that will thrive in the future are those that encourage transparency, but also give back value because of that transparency. So remember I spoke about the biology thing. Nobody's just going to give their DNA to an insurance company because your first concern is, if I give my DNA to Allianz, are they then going to cancel my life insurance policy? That's because we've learned, unfortunately, not trust insurance companies. The insurance company of the future, we will want to give them our DNA because we know it's going to help me live to 150, to avoid Alzheimer's, to avoid cancer. And one of the case studies we did actually, which is key, was in Japan on critical illness for an insurance company. We looked at critical illness numbers in terms of the claims data. Now, the average critical illness, so critical illness is like mainly cancer today, is stage 3 cancer, an $800,000 payout, with a policyholder that's had a policy for roughly average 17 years. If you reverse engineer just those numbers using today's technology, it would have been more commercially attractive for the insurance company to fund for you to have a blood test every 2 weeks and detect your cancer at stage -1, which is pre-metastasization before it becomes a tumor, where treatment is just a pill and day surgery, where we can take treatment costs down from $800,000 down to about $2,000. And here's the kicker. You don't get sick. You don't need chemotherapy. You don't need 2 years off life. The performance overall was, just for one risk classification in critical illness, the loss ratio went from 71% down to 37%. If anyone's worked in actuarial processes, that is a staggering impact on the loss ratio of a portfolio. Here's the kicker though. The market tested overwhelmingly that most people would pay 3 times their current premium for that kind of security on their future health. Like, you think about why are insurance companies not doing that more often? So yeah, to answer your question, transparency is partly default, but it's got to come back with value. It can't just be a governing stick, okay, like the NSA.
Scott, you said 9 out of 10 asset managers will be out of a job because of artificial intelligence in the future. When is the future? What's your timeline for this?
So artificial intelligence is still only at like less than 1% of potential today. The biggest dependency on that actually is the transfer across to public cloud, because as an infrastructure level, AI can't really exist on traditional approaches to infrastructure. So we've got to get past that 2020 benchmark, and so you're probably looking around 2025 through 2028, 10 years.
Okay, so and is artificial intelligence the single most disruptive trend in your view?
It's a layer. It's a layer. So artificial intelligence, if used appropriately, so here's the biggest challenge. We have a weakness. We, as a species, have an Achilles heel. It's called our emotional brain, irrational thinking. Okay, that is our weakness. Anybody who's watched Transcendence or Ex Machina or any of those, or even Her, the artificial intelligence movies, our weakness is we have an emotional, irrational brain. Okay, you start using artificial intelligence, it's purely logic. It's purely intellect. Okay, so they can make logical decisions that are superior to us, to the point where the age-old case study was done with Mercedes, is what happens when an S-Class Mercedes is driving down the road and he has to decide, do I kill 3 kids or the granny? Like, there's no other alternative. And the car decides itself who dies. Okay? We as humans, as a species, will be stuck on that debate forever. We'll never ever reach a conclusion. That car and the artificial intelligence will go, done. Because the logical, rational answer is this. That is our challenge with artificial intelligence. That will actually help, but that's going to take a lot of psychological rewiring for us to accept that as a social norm. That's why I say 10 years is still conservative.
Finally, on a scale from 1 to 10, how far do you consider the financial industry to be when it comes to embracing technological change? 10 being the best.
Let me just, I'll answer the caveat. So I'm a former banker. I worked for ANZ for 10 years. Did a bunch of fintech startups. Don't have to look too far to see what they are. So I've seen both sides of the spectrum. If I'm going to say, for instance, I don't even think Amazon and Google are at the full potential of technology. They're at like a 7 out of 10. And the main reason being is they're waiting for us as a species to catch up. What Amazon and Google could do is not yet done because we are not catching up. Unfortunately, the banking sector, around about 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10, yeah. Wow.
And the biggest challenge is 2 things. One is the rules that have made us successful for the last 5 decades are the very things that are holding us back from where the industry is going. And I'm thinking procedure, policy, compliance, regulation, even the paradigm in which we can think in terms of how big things could be. Like, just at a single customer level, we need to be thinking 1,000 times more data on one customer. And for most people in the financial service sector, that's just scary. Like, why would I want to know your search habits? Why would I want to know what you browse? Why would I know what you went in and out of?
So they essentially have to turn into technology companies with a banking license.
Yeah. So the financial services companies that are already ahead of the curve have already recognized that they are a technology company first, with a bank with a license.
Scott, a very inspiring talk. Thank you very much. Please give a big hand to Scott Bales. Thank you.